Whoa, what? I was pulling the handbrake. What was that? What? Look at this. So, this might be the first and most overwhelmingly negative review I will have ever made on a new indie racing game. And unfortunately, I think it is quite justified. So just a couple minutes ago, I wrapped up my first gameplay session with the new game from Three Fields Entertainment called Wreckreation, who are also the same guys that brought you games such as Dangerous Driving, which was not good. So needless to say, my expectations going into this were really low, especially because some of the cringe-worthy marketing that they were doing for the game did not do them any favors.
Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out!
Will Toby and Susie finally move into their dream home? Or will Brian get up to his old shoe?
Will you shut the hell up?
So my expectations were really low. I already saw a bunch of other people doing reviews on the game and streaming the game, and it didn't really look super great. So I tried to just like really expect the least, but hopefully still find some kind of surprise, like some kind of surprises that would I could find to appreciate. But I just really left the game feeling really overall dissatisfied, and I ended up refunding the game as well, because I ran into so many issues, both on a technical level and on a gameplay level, that I just decided it's just not worth the 40 bucks that I spent on it. So yeah, in case you were wondering, no, I did not get a review key. I don't know why. Maybe they just don't know I exist. Maybe they blacklisted me because they were afraid that I say anything negative. Look, I don't know, and I don't care. But do know that I bought this game with my real money, which obviously means I'm not biased in any kind of way. And in fact, I'm more critical because I spent my own money on it. But I guess now that I refunded the game, it doesn't really matter anymore. So honestly, I think before I go into any of the specifics, I'm just gonna show some clips of mine where I played the game that I think should really help paint a good picture of what Wreckreation is like. Are you kidding? There's no collision on these. Do they have no collision as well? Okay, so these have collision, but the blue ones don't. What? Dude, what are these physics? Oh my god, they put the settings menu in the DJ quick menu. So like if you want to change settings, you can't pause and do it. You have to do it here while the game is going, as if this is an always online game. To change the settings, dude. What is going on? Like, this is... What? Oh my god, what? What? How is this possible? Oh my lord. Okay, now we're stuck. What is going on with the textures? I'm using an SSD. This is the starter car. I'm using the... Oh my... What are these physics, dude? Let me off here. What? It crashes me automatically just for landing. But you're kidding. Oh my god, the traffic just phases through everything. You cannot be serious. Look at this. What a game. What a game. Dude, how many objects in this game do not have any collision? This is ridiculous. So you can actually just glide over the water. This is ridiculous. I'm sorry. I'm and also, why does the game think I am American? Game just crashed. Oh man, what is this? So, yeah, that kind of sums up my experience, if I'm being quite honest. I guess overall, I just think even outside of all the issues that I highlighted, I don't think this game works on a conceptual level. It just does not. Because it tries so hard to mix all kinds of games together that just don't fit. So you have the Burnout gameplay on a Forza style map that is like really open with no barriers, with Trackmania building mechanics on top of it. So for example, as you've probably already seen, if you crash into someone, which is already difficult enough because the cars do not move properly, but if you manage to crash someone like into the side, in the Burnout games, they would usually like slam straight into a wall or into a parked car, and then they would crash out because it makes sense. But here, since there is, for the most part, nothing to the side, nothing on the sides, like just grass and trees, the moment they hit the grass, they immediately like crash out. Like it's so unbelievable and unauthentic. And it just comes from like wanting to marry this Burnout gameplay with this Forza style map that just doesn't work together. Like by all accounts, the tracks and maps in Burnout games are mostly fairly narrow. There's walls and obstacles all over the place, and it's to make this kind of gameplay style work. And yeah, outside of that, I'm not sure if it was obvious, but the handling is just quite bad. Now, it kind of depends on the kind of car you're driving, so there are different vehicle classes, and some definitely do drive better than others. But I think all of them just have the same problem, and it's that they're not agile enough. Like when you're moving the analog stick, it takes ages for the car to go anywhere, which is really bad for a game like this where you want to immediately have like a lot of sideways momentum to hit cars, which is just so hard to do in this game. And the physics are a complete disaster. Like I gotta be honest, the physics are absolutely atrocious. Anything you try to do in this game just feels awful. So jumps feel somehow even more artificial than in The Crew. And the crash physics at times can be nice. Like if you're tumbling down a mountain, it looks kind of okay, I guess. But this game still has the same problem as the previous game, where it feels like if you hit a car and it crashes out, it immediately loses like all momentum. It's not as bad as in the previous game, but it's still there. And in general, like anything physics related just feels super bad. Graphically, I also gotta be honest, this is one ugly game, which does surprise me because it's running on Unreal Engine 5. And if there's one thing I at least have to give Unreal Engine 5 credit for, is that the games at least tend to look decent. They might look really basic and samey, but at least they look decent. This game, I don't know what they did, it just looks ugly. Like, there's something about the contrasts of the game that just looks super off. Reflections also look really noisy to the point where it changes the entire paint of the car at times. And they're also using a lot of like really awful looking filters. So I think the most disgusting one is just the sharpening filter. Like you can tell that there's some artificial sharpening going on that is way overtuned, and it makes all the edges look really fuzzy. And then there's also an absurd, like actually excessive amount of chromatic aberration. And as far as I could tell, you cannot turn any of this off. Although lowering the graphics settings at times does make the game look better somehow. I don't know why or how, but it just does. And when it comes to the map itself, this map somehow manages to be even more boring and dead than Forza Horizon 5's map, which is quite impressive. Now, you might say, oh, they've done this to accommodate for the track building, so there's a lot of space. I don't care. It's just, I'm sorry. I'm not gonna be building maps all the time or tracks all the time. The map itself needs to be interesting, and even then, I think you could make an open and big map, but at least have like different biomes and districts that look distinct from one another. Every single place in this game looks pretty much the same, and it's also mostly really dead. Like there's absolutely nothing. There's no traffic, there's no cars, there's absolutely nothing going on. There's no life on this map. And this has a really negative effect on pretty much anything you do in this game. So for example, the races themselves are really lame because it feels like the entire map, or like all of the roads in this game, are basically highway roads. At least it feels that way. So there's no narrow spots or no interesting back alleys anywhere. There's no big cities in general. It's just a bunch of like super wide and long roads, which makes any kind of race really boring for the most part. And in fact, you have to also drive to the races themselves, because you can't just fast travel to them or start them from the map. You can maybe fast travel to spots close to them, but you still have to drive to the races themselves. And since the map is so massive, that usually also takes way longer. And it's just not fun or interesting, it's just really boring. Now, there are also different event types other than just basic racing, and one of them is called Road Rage, and it is exactly the same as it was in the Burnout games, where, you know, you have to do a bunch of like takedowns and you have to hit a certain takedown target. And it is almost impressive how they managed to pull this off, but it is like by far and wide the worst mode in the entire game. Like, this was in the Burnout games, Road Rage used to be the most fun game mode in the entire game, and in here it's somehow the worst one. Like, it's an absolute disaster, mainly because the opponents spawned way too far away. Like, usually in the Burnout games, they did this in a really clever way, where you would constantly have opponents spawning behind you and then catching up close to you and then slowing down when they're near you. And when they're in front of you, they also slow down massively. So they made sure that there's always opponents around you, and it never takes too long to get these opponents, you know, into your vicinity. But in this game, in Wreckreation, opponents always spawn in front of you and they do not slow down. So most of the Road Rage events, you're just trying to catch up to all of the opponents instead of actually like crashing them and trying to rack up a high score. It's an absolute disaster of a game mode that I never ever want to do again in this game. But that's obviously only encapsulating the basic driving and game modes. So obviously, since it is called Wreckreation, there's a creation aspect to this, which comes in the form of a track builder. And it is so basic. It is probably one of the most basic track builders I have ever seen. Like, you have a very, very limited amount of parts available from the beginning of the game. You can find more parts on the map, I did find out. But as far as I could tell, it is mostly decoration. Or at least there is a bunch of decoration or decorative items plastered on the map. So if there are new track parts, like road parts, it's going to be a pain in the ass to even find them. But the basic set of roads that the game gives you are way too basic. Like, it is super simple stuff that only just kind of like snaps into each other, and you also cannot customize or like transform these parts in any way. This is what I really liked about Hot Wheels Unleashed, which also had a track builder, and in there you could kind of like transform and stretch these kind of like parts to your liking, whereas here you're left with like super basic presets that for the most part don't even transition into each other really nicely. Like, as far as the track building aspect goes, it is so basic and disappointing, and I don't see anybody being able to build anything interesting with it. And this was pretty much the only new thing this game has going for it. Like, in every kind of way, it is just a straight up copy of Burnout Paradise. So the track building aspect was like the one thing, the only thing this game has going for it, and it's just bad. So it's just, I don't understand what the point was, honestly. And since I already mentioned Burnout Paradise, we're gonna mention this a bunch now. This game, Wreckreation, I just want to say this, has no style or atmosphere or personality of its own. It is the most bland feeling racing game I have ever played. Like, I don't want to call it an Unreal Engine asset flip, but it sure feels like one. Like, aside from the graphics and the map looking really basic, the same also extends to the entire UI, the menus, pretty much anything. What little does look interesting is just a straight up copy from Burnout Paradise, to the point where even like car unlocks have the same look to them. The car is like presented in the same angle. You have the same like tutorial messages in the same kind of fonts at the bottom of the screen. Like, it borders on plagiarism, honestly. Like, I cannot in good conscience call this inspired. It copies so much to the point where I just have to call this a borderline plagiarism of Burnout Paradise to an absolutely absurd degree. So I think I've made it obvious enough with everything that I've talked about and everything I've shown that this game is nowhere near worth buying, let alone worth playing. Like, this game is $40 where I live. It's currently on sale for like 10% off, but I don't think that makes much of a difference. This game is probably not even worth $20 if I'm being honest, because it's just, it feels so beta. Like, it feels like I'm just playing some kind of like in development build. It just doesn't feel like a finished product. Not in gameplay, not in art style, not in like polishedness. It's an absolute like tech demo, honestly. And I can already hear a bunch of people typing into the comments, oh, but it's just made by 10 developers, don't be so harsh, like this game is made by 10 people. I don't buy that cope, and you should not buy this cope either, because there's awesome indie titles, awesome indie racing games out there that were made by less people. There are better indie games out there that are just made by one person. In fact, some of these I've even shown on this channel before. Like the cope that this is just made by 10 developers and we shouldn't be too harsh on the game. I don't care. Like, they're still asking 40 bucks for this game, and so it will be judged against other games that have the same price. And there's so many better games out there for less than that you could buy right now that were made by less developers as well. Like, at the end of the day, it's a matter of scope and ambition. Like, the problem with this game that I have is that it's really obvious to me that this was never a project that in any way, shape, or form was doable by just 10 people. And they had 5 years of development time for this game. I just want to point this out as well. This game has been in development for 5 years. I don't even believe that it was in development like all the time. It was probably like on and off. But 5 years of development from 10 people, like, I don't think this game would have been done in 10 years either. Because it's just not a project that is doable by 10 people. So what they should have done, instead of just adding more and more features, more and more content, and being more and more ambitious with their project, instead what they should have done is just take the previous game that they made, The Dangerous Driving, which already was not good, and just refine it. Just make the bare basics better, make the handling better, make the physics better, make the visuals better, make the maps better. Like, don't actually try to add all this stuff on top of everything, like an open world and a track builder and this and that, when you cannot even get the basics right. Like, ultimately, that is my problem. It's that the game has not evolved from the previous one, it has only expanded, but it hasn't actually improved in any meaningful way. Like, a good comparison, I think, here is what they should have done is like going from Burnout 1 to Burnout 2. Like, Burnout 2 wasn't a massively bigger or more expansive game than Burnout 1. I think really the only thing of note that they added was the crash mode, and then maybe like another game mode or two. But for the most part, when it comes to like the bare basics, Burnout 2 is fairly similar to Burnout 1. And it's because they knew that Burnout 1 wasn't perfect. It had a lot of issues and was also fairly basic, just like Dangerous Driving. And so they did the sensible and reasonable thing and just refine all of these basics and turn it into a game that is actually super worth playing. But what they did here is basically the equivalent of going from Burnout 1 to trying to immediately make Burnout Paradise, which, like, does not work. And even in Burnout Paradise, Criterion kept things simple because they knew making the Burnout format work in an open world is extremely difficult. And Burnout Paradise, I imagine, was an extremely difficult game to make. It's the reason why that game only has like 6 finish lines. And it's the reason why the crash mode is super basic, because they had such a hard time making this Burnout formula work in an open world. And it's also the reason why for a lot of people Burnout Paradise is not better than Burnout 3 or Revenge, because it's such a different beast and they had such a hard time just making Burnout work in an open world. It makes me wonder what Three Fields Entertainment was thinking, that they can do this with just 10 people and a smidgen of a budget. It's complete and utter delusion, in my opinion, that they thought this would in any way work. Like, the scope and ambition of this entire project, like Wreckreation, it was doomed from the start. Like, this entire game was doomed from the start. And so I don't see any reason why you would play this game when you can pick up Burnout Paradise today for like 10 bucks, or maybe even I think 5 bucks on a sale. And you might say, oh yeah, but this is an unfair comparison because Burnout Paradise was a AAA game made by more people. The problem is that Three Fields Entertainment is doing this to themselves because they keep excessively copying Burnout Paradise. They are the ones that keep inviting these comparisons to the discussion. I would not compare their game to Burnout Paradise if they didn't try their damned hardest to copy and plagiarize it as much as possible. Had they just taken the Burnout formula of like, your car can crash and you can crash out other cars, but did their own thing with it, I would not be comparing it to Burnout Paradise. I would not bring Burnout Paradise into the discussion. But because they just tried so hard to bank on people's nostalgia of Burnout Paradise, I will compare it to it. And it's not, of course, it's not a fair comparison to make, but it's the one that they have brought into the discussion. So once again, what they should have done is just take the basic gameplay formula of Burnout and do their own spin on it, do their own thing with it, and like add their own flair, add their own personality to it, which they've just completely failed to do. And so where does that leave the studio? Where does that leave the developers? Well, the game is not really well received at all. I would say, like, when the game launched, it was actually sitting at mostly negative reviews. Now it is actually sitting at mixed reviews, which is still not great because it's actually still less than 50% positive. But honestly, when it comes to me, I have lost all hope in the studio. Like, I remember back then when 3 Fields Entertainment was still fairly new and they just brought out their first game, I think it was called Dangerous Golf. As a young dude, I actually visited their website back in the day, and I distinctly remember how their office looked. It was like kind of like this, like, it was almost like this kind of like hut where they just made their games, and it looked super cozy. And I remember thinking back then, like, man, they're probably gonna make such good games. Like, I had so much confidence and hope in the studio that they would really, like, be killing it. And now 10 years have passed, and they have absolutely nothing to show for it. Like, every single game that they put out has been either really basic or really bad. There's no in between. Like, I've lost all hope in the studio, and I'm absolutely not looking forward to anything else that they're making, because it's really obvious to me that they just cannot make good games. Like, they are constantly ignoring all the valuable feedback. They're not actually improving any of the bare basics. And with Wreckreation, as I explained earlier, it has only expanded, but not actually evolved. That is kind of how their design philosophy goes. And it also shows that it doesn't really matter if big names from previous great developers like Criterion are in the studio, because a developer studio isn't only as good as the lead developers, it's as good as the entire team. And the only reason why the Burnout games used to be so good isn't because of all of the lead developers that made it happen. It's because of the entire team and how well the entire team was working together and how talented all of the ground floor developers are, as well as the generous budget that they had from EA or even before that Acclaim. Like, it takes so much to make a good game, but I think even then, if you don't have a team and if you don't have a budget, you can still make great games. You just have to know how. And 3 Fields Entertainment does not know how. And so at this point, I'm just done with their games. I'm not going to buy their next game. I'm not even gonna try it out. I'm just, yeah, just overall completely disappointed in the studio, and I'm not sure what else I can say. So, yeah, this was pretty much my review on Wreckreation. It doesn't really feel like a review because I didn't really play the game enough. My opinion on the game and the studio itself. Let me know what you think. If you find anything good about this game, let me know about it in the comments below. I genuinely would love to know if there's at least something to appreciate here that I missed. Yeah, that's all for now. Thanks so much for watching or listening. Until next time, take care, take it easy, and as always, peace. See you guys.